Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm going over my quarterly tier list for Kill Team. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video if you found it useful and helpful. Remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, an affiliate link at Element Games, an affiliate link at discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yeah, let's get on with today's video. So a little bit delayed, I'm back with my quarterly tier list. I played one tournament and a lot of games. Wanted to get a good feel of the meta before going into this, especially as we had a Balance Dataslate and new teams. But remember, the tier list is just for fun. It's kind of like a tool just for if you want to see what the meta is like in general. Obviously, if you're a dedicated player, more experienced to a faction, the tiers aren't going to be as important. But it's a good idea for just like looking at matchup spread or factions you're likely to see a lot of. And I'll have an article version of this in the episode description below. But remember, you know, for S tier kill teams, they're basically the best kill teams in the faction, best kill teams in the game. They're like factions with minimal bad matchups, very likely to win an event if you take them. Then A tier kill teams are kill teams that are very likely to win an event as well. More bad matchups than the S tier, but can either win an event or go 3 wins, 1 loss minimum, or like at a 5 or 4, like a 6-round tournament, 5 wins, 1 loss, a very strong kill team, usually one that gatekeeps a lot of factions. Then in B tier, they're also strong kill teams, but with more bad matchups, usually going to go 3 wins, 1 loss, can go 2 wins, 2 draws, and then at like a 6-round event, they're probably going to go 4 wins, 2 losses. Then C tier, they're like middle of the road factions, very likely to go 2 wins, 2 losses, or 3 losses and a win. You know, just a lot of bad matchups, not very great. And then D tier, very likely to go all losses or just 1 win at an event. Very weak, not very good at all. But with the tiers explained, let's get into it. So for the overall tier list, starting in D tier, so these are all the factions. When these factions are released, it's just like they're in order of release, so it's not like in terms of power. So in D tier with Pathfinders, they're just not good at the moment. It's weird. They really kind of just need like guard back on Gallowdark, you know, when they can guard for conceal. They're a very difficult faction to balance because, as I said, they were very strong when they had their Alpha Strike. It's been removed, so they're not that great anymore. They're just in a weird spot. Then you've got Lucidian Starstriders. They're a good kill team in a terrible meta for them. They really need something like their rerolls working in close combat as well as shooting. The problem is they're just a 7-wound team with some 8-wound models fixed at 10 operatives. No flexibility. Like on paper and previously they were really good, but the meta around them is just horrible. And then in D tier you have Kazakin. So Kazakin have had a lot of great buffs, but unfortunately in a meta in a game where you have Tempestus Aquilons who have 1 more operative than them, but even if they were 10 operatives, Aquilons would just be better. It's very difficult to buff Kazakin without like power creeping or like destroying Aquilons. So they're in a very tough spot, unfortunately. Just a game, just a kill team that it's kind of been power crept out of use. Then going into C tier, we start off with Deathcore. Deathcore just solid. Like they're the OG Horde team, but you know, they've got tricks like with a lot of Accurate and Ceaseless. They're not bad, but they're just kind of honest in a way. You know, they don't have many tricks anymore. They fold to melee. Like they just can't beat any of the melee teams, and they even struggle into elites now. So I think C tier is fine for them. You know, one day they won't be affected by their own gas bombardment, but it's not today. Then we have Novitiates. Novitiates can be a good counter pick into the meta, but in general, they're still very vulnerable to crits. Most of the top teams have like lethal 5-up, lethal 4-up, or severe, so it gets around them quite well. They're still very tricksy, but I think C tier is a nice sphere for them to occupy. Then you have Warp Coven. Warp Coven are a strong kill team, but with the nerf to 5 operatives, you know, like if you take like -1 operative was so damaging for them. They need like, if they want to be a 5 operative team, they do need some buffs back. But then the problem is if you make them too strong as a 5-op team, they become very strange. But at the moment, just being like 3 sorcerers, a rubric, and 2 Zangors isn't great. You know, they're just very tough where they are now. Gallowpox are in C tier. That Rust Emanation nerf kind of just destroyed the team, because just making Freeze fail really sucks, because it was only on 4 Nightmare Hulks, and now it's just a wasted ploy. They've just removed the ploy from the game. Because the biggest thing is like, for teams that hit on 4s, They now don't hit on 5s into Gallopbox, and it just makes your Hulks less survivable and kind of useless. So it's just a shame, right? If they just revert that nerf, they'd probably jump back into A tier, but it's just weird. Then you've got Farstalker Kinband. Farstalker Kinband they have so many rules, so many abilities, yet they still can't punch up because of what exists in the meta. Like, for example, Felgor and Goremongers really mess up this team, but there's still a lot of operatives they just can't get through. It's their killing power, really. They can play the crit up and tack up well, but with the kill up being so important now, they can just kind of go super heavily behind. They're just in a weird spot. Like, they will one day end up like memed, maybe like Phobos last edition, where you add so many special rules onto the team, finally they'll be good, but you know. Then you've got Scout Squad. So Scout Squad did get some nice buffs, but the problem is combining their ambush play actually made it worse, and then their reposition and change order ploy also got worse because it got split up. So they didn't really get improved, and I think where the meta is going with all the teams we have now, they probably, unfortunately, need a 10th scout, which would be wild because last edition it was too strong, and nine operatives is a good design sphere for them to operate in. Like, the issue is, if you didn't want to give them an extra operative, you would need to give rending back to ambush. So in melee and shooting, they would get rending as well, because that would really help them a lot and probably ease the restriction on their strategy ploys. But at the moment, they're just a strange team where 9 operatives just isn't great, but 10 operatives would be too good. It's sucks to be scouts. Then you have Vespid. Vespid are probably top of C tier. Like, they actually do love hunting elite, but they get knocked down into C tier for me just due to how hard Gallo Dark and Tomb Mode is for them. It's very limiting, and considering those kill zones are like half of the games you play, going from, like, you just have to hope you play on Vulgus all the time. They're really weird. Like, they're almost there. They need less help than Kroot, but they are incredibly fun to play, and you can go, we can finally BBs to your opponent. Then we have Battleclade. Battleclade really should be doing better, but the problem is they're a very reactive team in a meta where you kind of have to be proactive. They really struggle punishing the opponent, actively punishing the opponent. You have to wait for your opponent to do stuff. Like, I think if you just made their damage negation, even though I hate damage negation, just an auto -1, then it makes them tankier so they can be aggressive, tank a charge, fall back, and then you can do like network counteract stuff. They are a very tricksy team, but the problem is, even for elites are so strong right now, elites can just bulldozer through the team, like especially Raveners. Raveners really bulldozer Battleclade as well as melee teams. So I think they're like tied / second strongest in C tier, but C tier has to be for them, unfortunately. Going into B tier, we start off with Legionary. Legionary are just solid. They're great, no real change. Even with the nerf to +1 APL on Tzeentch operatives, it's still fine. Like, they're just a really flexible, powerful team carried by the Marks and their specialists. Phobos Strike Team are B tier as well. You know, I was attempting to put them in A tier, but I think B tier is fine. You know, they still fold to a lot of like aggressive threats, and the meta at the moment is full of aggressive threats. They do counter some teams, like they actually do pretty well into Deathwatch, and you know, their Vox Breaker stopping all rerolls is very good, but they still just kind of fold. I think B tier is completely fine for them. Same for Blooded. Blooded are B tier, perfectly balanced. Blooded B, Blooded B tier. There's nothing really much to add. They haven't really changed. They're just perfectly balanced. Then we've got Void Dancer Troop. Void Dancer Troop are B tier. They were A, and the nerfs were quite severe. They're no longer super ignore piercing, but they still have a lot of innate powerful abilities. Now that blades are 4/6, you kind of don't need any other melee weapons. They kind of broke the melee weapon system by making blades 4/6. They still have a lot of efficient command point usage. They're still very fast and they have a lot of tricks. They just have to respect piercing weapons more and shooting teams, which is fine. Like, they are weaker, but I think B tier is a great spot for them. Then you've got Wormblade in B tier. Once again, they're solid. They've got strengths and weaknesses. They also fold to aggressive melee teams, but also elites. But they can also hold their own if you can like force your opponent to not get many charges and stage correctly. So I think B tier is great for them. Breachers, I actually put into B tier. I was tempted to put them in C tier, but I think in B tier they're enough of like, they're probably bottom of B. They are very grindy. and into specific teams, they will do very well. Like they actually do well into other hordes with the Null Skull and stuff, and teams they out-activate. It's just elite and high damage teams that they struggle into, which unfortunately there isn't really much to work around. You make the team too lethal and then they have everything that made them too strong before, where they're too lethal and too durable. I think actually where they are is fine. They're really grindy down kill team that just hopes to grind you down, but then falls apart to all the burst damage we have in the game. Then we have Hyrotech Circle. Hyrotech I actually put in B. So when I was at Worlds, they said if anyone had actually taken Hyrotech, they would have said that reanimated operatives revert the kill op. So they're currently a 5-op team. So if you've killed 5 models at the end of the game, you've maxed the kill op against them. I still think the kill op needs to be changed to kill grade 8 because they're 8 operatives. But otherwise, you know, despite the severe handicap of the kill op, like you can reliably take kill op into Hyrotech and max it and they make it as your primary. But Hyrotech still have very powerful shooting abilities and the Cryptek is still one of the best leaders in the game. They're very good into shooting teams and can even zone out melee teams. So I think B tier is fine. They're not unplayable, they're just playing with a massive handicap. Hand of the Archon go up to B tier, they are just a lot better now. They've got Ceaseless back, they've got a few more tricks. I like that the Crimson Duelist can double fight, and I think B tier is fine for them. They're still a very tempo-based team, so you're kind of slaved to your dice, especially until you get like Turning Point 3 where you have more pain tokens floating around. But they're a very flexible team, good at hunting elites, most elites anyway, because of what's happened in the game. But they're a very honest kill team, but also fun. And I think B tier is perfect for them. Exaction Squad are also in B tier. The double ammunition, every turning point helps a lot. And they're good just in like this counter team to hordes where like they're at the lower end of B tier. Like elites still mess them up, but they have a lot more of a chance into elites now with the double ammunition. They've got more ways to grind stuff down and they do great into hordes. So I think B tier is good for them. I've put Halfkin Salvages in B tier. The fact they have a Kazakin comms in terms of their comms doesn't need line of sight anymore, it really allows you to like safely stage, and when you're out activated, you can hide the comms on engage and now it can just give out 2 APL a turning point into 11/12 activation teams, which is really good. The dozer's a lot better. And I think B tier is a great like spot for them. They do struggle into teams that out activate them or like 10 operatives as well, but they're actually pretty solid into elites, and those changes should actually help them into the horde matchup as well. And they, with the dozer, they can actually threaten melee teams a bit more, which is really good. Then for B tier, you also have Harnkin Jaegers. I think Harnkin Jaegers are B tier. They're almost there in terms of power. They're a really interesting team zoning with the mines and the damage negation. Their biggest issue is with the S tier and some A tier teams, the problem is the damage negation that these teams have. And unfortunately, Jaegers have no way around that. They're still quite command point intensive. I would personally like if they get another like resourceful point, a turning point, and or they could cash in a resourceful point for a command point. I think that would be pretty cool. But otherwise, they're almost there. They're still a very strong team. They love the new approved ops 2025. They're really good at the crit op and tac op, and they're still quite killy. So B tier for them. Then Angels of Death go up to B tier. I think they deserve to be in B tier. They pretty much destroy everyone in C tier sans Vespid, and even on Gallowdark, I think they beat Vespid. So for me, they're in B tier. They're a lot better with the buffs they receive, namely to the captain and to some chapter tactics, but they're just kind of fine where they are. They're still missing a few things. Like personally, I would love to give the Warriors Ceaseless, depending on what doctrine you have active, but otherwise they're good. Then you have Plague Marines, they're still in B tier. They're a very solid kill team now. As I said, there's nothing much changed for them. Maybe they could see a buff or two, but I think they're in a good spot where they are. Their main problem for them is the teams who are above them, who are too strong, but otherwise Plague Marines are a very solid and reliable team to play. In B tier, we also have Ratlings going up to B tier. They are now really fast with their free dashes. The interesting thing is they actually don't really like playing into elite still too much because you only get 6 dashes instead of, you know, well, or 7 depending on the activation order, but it's still not as good. Like it's still really good because they effectively all have free dashes. So they're kind of pseudo all free APL. They're actually really good into hordes now. And yeah, no, they're really fun team at the moment. There's like, issues they have in the topper tier, but with their stuff like lastness, they can do fun things like Fast Walker Kimban and really like swing it on the crit up. So they're a great team. And then in B tier, we have the Stealth Battlesuits. So I was originally going to put them in A, but I think B tier at the moment is a safe spot because like they probably may end up in A, but I think B tier is a really good spot. They destroy elite teams they play into, but there's a lot of horde teams they just don't do that great into. They play a very passive game, but I think feeling it out, B tier is fine. I think people are going to struggle at first with how difficult they are to play, but once people get the hang of them, they'll see how strong they are. And yeah, B tier is a good place to be in. It's not bad. It's balanced, so yeah. Going into A tier, we have Commandos. Commandos are really good now with the Nob buff. Like, out of all the buffs, the not being able to double fight is amazing with the Chopper going to 5 attacks, 5-6. You know, the Claw being 5-7 shock stun is nice, right? But you're going with the Chopper. The Nob being able to double fight and basically solo 2 Marines really fixes the problems the team had. It's a shame they got that buff just as they got rotated out, but my gosh, they are so good and so much fun now. Corsair Voidsguard are an A tier as well. They're still the same. Great at hunting elites, can flex out into hordes. They're very fast, tricksy. You know, they're just kind of the standard Eldari team. Like, they're very, very good. Very, very good. Only downside is they're not legal at GW events and some classified events. But otherwise, great. Hunterclade are also in A tier. They are very, very strong. They have a lot of tricks. You can have stuff like a 4 dice save for up operative immune to piercing once per turning point. Very, well, once per shoot action per turning point. Very, very potent. They have lots of tricks. They can flex really well. Great shooting, melee, good selection attack ops. A tier for them. Felgor are also A tier, heavily carried by being able to abuse flank. And I think once that probably gets changed, which I've heard rumors that it might, Felgor will probably drop down, but they're still really good. Like, they counter a lot of the meta teams. They're still quite vulnerable to elites, but you know, with flank, just abusing flank, they're incredibly strong and hard to play into. Then you got Inquisitorial Agent, probably the best horde team, I would say. You know, they still have crazy reliable shooting, very flexible from tac ops and operative selection, so it's really hard for people to counter. They can also turn off expendable and abuse, like they can shout, turn off your expendable and get the kill up from it. So they have a lot of tricks, and they actually are very reliable into stuff like Death Watch. They're just really good. They take a lot to play. The main problem they find is like the aggression in the game from elites can be very devastating. So if you're not staged back or you're too close, elite teams can quickly like double kill you and win the game, but they're still great. Chaos Cult are A tier as well. I mean, like, they're dreading the Galapox change because unfortunately, what happened to Galapox and what Games Workshop have set as a precedent, it's probably going to happen to Chaos Cult as well. But at the moment, Chaos Cult are very powerful. Their Torment and Mutants, like pinging off the -1 to hit aura with Accurate 2 and Ceaseless, is incredibly powerful. They're a really fast, aggressive horde team. They love the change to infiltration because they can go steal intelligence or like stalk you or even flex into route. Very strong team, difficult to play and collect, but incredibly good. Then you got Blades of Cain, no change. I mean, their Scream got nerfed a bit, Banshee's got nerfed a bit, but they're still a very solid and flexible team. Like, they can explode with shooting and melee. They really reward the player for planning out correctly and adapting on the fly. They're still very difficult to play. Like, I would say they're more difficult to play Inquisitorial Agents, but the fact everyone is free APL gives you good power over the crit up, and you've got like a super varied tac op selection. They, in my opinion, they're the best Eldari team, but they're just very good. Solid A tier. Then you've got Mandrakes. Mandrakes are A tier. I only really pushed them up into A tier because of Worlds. They did very well in Worlds, and I started to remember the stuff they have that was never addressed. So you've got like the 9-inch Shadow Teleport charge, which only works on open, which probably won't last. And you know, you've got the free dashes and stuff. They're very good into the top teams that you can't see at the moment, but they actually do struggle, in my opinion, to other Eldari teams and actually other Horde teams. Horde teams really mess them up, and I think people have just forgotten how to play into them. Like, if you just basically play obscured, like no one's within an inch, or hug light cover, and also hug light cover with smoke grenades, the team actually doesn't really do much against you, but they're still a very tricksy team that people have to respect. Then in A tier is also Nemesis Claw. I actually bumped them up to A tier because I've played them a lot now and I've seen them play even with the nerfs, and they're still very strong and flexible. They have a lot of tools. Like, sure, prescience points are harder to use, but they're still good. And they have a lot of tricks with chain snares, really powerful melee, and like the ventriloquist is still amazingly powerful. And when Vox Scream does go off, still good. So I think A tier is really good, especially with how they play into Deathwatch and all the other teams. Like, you know, once they charge a horde and just like tag them, they're really good counters into Sanctifiers and Inquisitorial Agent. Then you have Brood Brothers in A tier, mainly carried by the Magos, but they have a lot of tricks. They're a really powerful shooting team with some melee. Like, you can still flex into the Primus as well if you want that, and you've also got the Patriarch if needed. But otherwise, you know, they really like the change to the crit op. They play the crit op really well. They've got good tac ops. Yeah, they're just in a great spot. Like, security and infiltration is a really nice pick for Brood Brothers, and they're just a great team. They have to just only respect the melee hordes, because the melee hordes brutalize them. Like, they still can't beat Goremongers, and Felgor is incredibly tough, but otherwise they're a great team. Then you've got Tempestus Aquilons, they're A tier as well. That 11th Operative has done so much work for them, and they still are keeping it. Like, their problem is, like, their faction ability basically turns off turning point 3, so for half the game you don't have it, but they're still very powerful with effectively 2 melter weapons, a really reliable plasma, lots of reliable and consistent shooting, as well as mobility. They're A tier, nothing really much to add there. Wrecker team, like the Wrecker crew, A tier. I really wanted to put them in S tier, but they're A tier for me. Getting the +1 APL for charging has done wonders for the team. You can do crazy tricks like breach, charge, fight, whereas before you could only breach and charge. You don't really care about stuns anymore. They are a bit more oppressive now, but they can actually play the game, which is really good, and they don't have to worry about being stun locked. So yeah, you know, they're great. They're super flexible in melee and shooting. Obviously, they're really dependent on Wrecker points, and they're a team that really is difficult because the more their dice explode, the more powerful they get. But you kind of have games where you're just not rolling well because most of your shooting hits on 5s. But with rolling 6 dice every shoot action, you're eventually going to roll those 6s. So for me, they're definitely A tier. Goremongers are A tier, but they're like bottom of A tier. What keeps them in A tier for me is the fact how they are what I call like a gatekeep team. They have been designed, either intentionally or unintentionally, to warp the meta, and they will gatekeep all Horde teams because Horde teams just can't kill them. Like, the only counter to Goremongers is just elites, and we're an elite heavy meta, but they exist in A tier for me because they're still very good and they brutalize effectively every Horde in the game. So the problem Horde teams have, if they do well into elites, you kind of just have to pray you don't run into Goremongers, and for that fact, Goremongers are still like A tier. They actually do really well into Felgor, and they only really scared about like the S tier teams, some elites and Raveners. But yeah, Goremongers are still great. Sanctifiers are also A tier. I think people, like, the problem is people say they're bad, and it's mainly the bad players. Like, so they did get heavily nerfed, but they needed those nerfs. The players that have stuck with the faction have actually said, oh, they're still very strong. You just actually have to play them properly now. So if you don't stage your auras correctly and like focus on points, you can't just YOLO into the enemy anymore. So they are much harder to play, but with the powerful abilities they have, damage negation, the output they have, they're still definitely A tier for me. They're still just very strong. And I think where they are is actually in a good spot. You know, the Null Skull is still a bit problematic, but otherwise they're good. Then for ending off A tier, we have Raveners. They're just in A tier now. Like, the Rive Out of Sight change was needed, but it's really messed up Ravener players because now they actually have to commit to the board state more. They can still play this massive denial, and they also still stat check a lot of teams, because I think what a lot of Ravener players forget is, like, you've got 520 wound operatives at movement 7. You don't always have to hide in the tunnel. For example, into like Horde teams or weak melee teams, you can just deploy 5 Raveners, stage them at the end of turning point 1, and then just rush your opponent down turning point 2 and onwards. Because you can just charge double fight, charge double fight. You know, you just mince stuff. And they're very powerful. Like, their main trick now is dominate, you know, go and dominate turning point 3, or like you try and go for a risky like install device. But otherwise, they're solid A tier, which, you know, is good. They're also a kind of gatekeepy, design locking team. Now we go into the S tier. Whoa, big surprises. So S tier Canoptic, they're the best team in the game. They have huge problems because Expendable is too strong at the moment. Games Workshop have made Expendable too strong, which is kind of funny because they designed the team and TAC Ops, but like they're just too good. They have very little counters, and it's usually down to mispositioning by the Canoptic player. They're very boring, uninteractive. They have great counters, like the Banishment Gun is probably the most honest part about the team, but it gets around stuff like Felgor, Medics, all these kind of teams that just don't die. They've got the Banishment Gun. But then the Matrix is very strong, and it's mainly the Warriors carrying them. The fact that they can do mission actions, they can kill and come back and don't count towards your opponent's TAC Ops is kind of too good. So hopefully in January, like what I hope happens is Warriors lose Expendable, so they always count for the kill op, and you can't command people to go on guard, and you can't counteract command. That probably fixed most of the issues with the kill team, and then they become playable for other people, because then actually you're probably getting much more on the TAC up, because most of the time Canoptic are winning by 1 or 2 points because you've got no points on the kill op versus them. So changing that would help a lot, but they're just very strong and uninteractive. Then you've got Deathwatch in S tier. They are basically the one team that reliably has a chance into Canoptic. If they can get into Canoptic, it's game over. So you have to play very aggressively. They do have issues with reliability, especially when counteracting and retaliating, but also into non-Xenos teams. But most of the meta teams are Xenos at the moment, so Deathwatch are in a great spot. They have insane damage, you know, they need special issue ammunition to only work on bolt weapons. They need the Vox Breaker to go down to D3. They need their bracelets to only work at the start of their activation. And, you know, then they're probably just fine. But they're still an oppressive stat check team that a lot of teams just can't deal with because Deathwatch can just run at you and wipe you out. And, you know, while their win rate's gone down a bit, they're still the most popular faction at the game, and they have impressive tournament wins. Like, podium-wise, they're doing really well. So definitely S tier. Weaker than Canoptic, but you have a great chance into Canoptic with them. Like, the Plasma also needs to be heavy reposition, but it's the current stuff they have now is just what tips them over into, like, the unbearable / just bullying most of the factions of the game. Then in S tier, you have the Wolf Scouts. The Wolf Scouts are easily S tier. They may be bottom of S tier. I think they do really well into Deathwatch, but they just struggle into Canoptic. The problem is the Storm. The Storm is too big. A 12-inch bubble, why? Why does that exist? And they are command point intensive, but you do have to remember they have a model that can just generate them free command points at the start of the game. Now, while that is incredibly unlikely, they're usually actually getting 1 to 2 free command points, and then either 1 to 2 free rerolls. If it's bad if it's during turning point 1, but if it's during turning point 2, 3, or 4, that's fine. Those are still free command points you didn't need to use. So they are incredible. The Wolf is very good. I think people underestimate the Wolf heavily. I'm hearing more and more horror stories of people being traumatized by wolves, and I'm like, you gotta watch out for that Wolf. That Wolf will get you. But they're just too strong. If there was ever an argument for power creep, S tier is the proof of it, and so are Wolf Scouts. The fact their leader in the Storm with the -1 attack, which is bizarre. The -1 attack and the D3+1 damage, if they don't die, means he kills everyone who charges him. Everyone who charges him will die, including other elites. Other Space Marines who charge your Sergeant in the Storm with your buffs up, he'll kill them. And remember, everyone has frost weapons, so like everyone has power weapons. Your leader's lethal 4 up. Like, if they wanted to tone down the team, you have to make the bubble of the Storm a 4-inch bubble, because they can move at every turning point, and with the leader, well, the Psyker, sorry, the leader's medic ability should go down to just a scratch, and then the frost weapons should be once per operative per turning point, like when they fight. The fact everyone just goes like, oh, power knives. Oh wow, my leader has a super power weapon. It's like they forgot what happened when they gave Scouts power knives. It's just like we're in a time warp of power creep. It's terrifying. But Space Wolves are very strong. They are very powerful, and they can bully a lot of people. And people are like realizing they still have a lot of depth. They're like super strong. And yeah, they just shut down all melee teams. Any team that relies on 4 attack melee operatives, It's rough. I don't think you can actually beat Wolf Scouts. And then even 5 attack melee operatives going down to 4, super struggling to Space Wolves on the charge because they're going to be 5 attacks and you're going to be 4, and they're going to be lethal 5 up with balance. Very difficult team to play into, and they have great zoning and board control. And the fact they can move the storms means like half of the turning point they can be defensive, and when you've staged around them respected, then they can just go move the storm. It's time to push up, boys. Very powerful team. So now I'll quickly go into the the classified tier list, right? So I won't go through it as in depth. This is the classified tier list. So as you can see with the classified tier list, there's not much change. The only thing that went down is I put Breaches down into C tier along with Angels of Death. They're a lot weaker when you remove the other teams. Otherwise, there's no real change. There's just not much, you know. Scouts and Kazakin actually are the worst teams in the game if you only look in the classified format. Personally, Scouts really need an extra push in terms of like rending and stuff like that. But otherwise, as you can see, no real change. So if you're going to classified events, if you're playing Scouts with Kazakin, you are the best kind of person and you deserve all the awards. But it's tough. I mean, you could argue that Vespid are B tier in the classified format, and you could probably be right there. But I think it's just how badly they perform on Gallowdark which pushes them down. But yeah, this is just the classified tier list with no yassified teams, you know. So there it is. So for the quarter 4 tier list, you know, there's been some changes. Actually, like if you delete the S tier from the game, like if you just remove the S tier teams, we would have an amazing meta. We're almost there. You've still got some issues like Mandrakes need a slight tap to reduce their toxicity. Felgor need a tap, probably like at least with flank. I think what Games Workshop will do is say like Frenzied Operatives can't score flank or Frenzied Operatives can't score tac ops, and then that probably just fixes Felgor. And you know, Chaos Cult unfortunately probably going to get a slight tap based on what happened with Galapox, because they have been overperforming for a while. And you know, now Games Workshop hit factions based on single player performance. Fortunately, Chaos Cult will probably get tapped. Not saying they should, but it's just how Games Workshop have established their balance trends now. But generally, yeah, if you remove the S tier from the game, the team, like the game's really fun. We're almost there in terms of like the near perfect meta we had before Blood and Zeal. There's still problems like, you know, Goremongers would just forever be a problem for like hordes, and we only have 3 objectives. Until those kind of change, I don't see how horde teams will do better, especially if we're going to win a tournament. But overall, like, yeah, it's really fun. We should have a Balance Dataslate in January, and I'm really hoping the S tier just gets, like, Canoptic at this point just need to be destroyed. You know, they're just not fun to play into, and they're very boring to play as. They're super defensive and just consistent. Deathwatch need a bit of a peg down, so they're less toxic and intimidating to the rest of the meta. And then obviously Wolf Scouts need nerfs as well, because at the moment they are gatekeeping a lot of melee teams and a lot of teams in general. So, you know, we've had some changes. There's teams that unfortunately I can't see ever getting better with the team structure we have at the moment. For example, Kazakin. I would like Kazakin to be better, but I see no way you can make them better while Aquilons exist. Scouts just need their rending back. Fast Talker Kinban probably need rending on their melee. That would actually help a lot. But otherwise, yeah, like, the meta is quite fun if you just ignore the S tier, which you could argue is the same for previous tier lists. But if you look at most of the factions are in the A tier or B tier, and even the C tier is still pretty competitive. And you, as I said, you know, there are players who do well with individual factions. So for example, you still have players doing really well with Fast Talker Kinband and Vespid. So they're not horrible. You just have to acknowledge that they have really bad matchups or kill zones. And yeah, Approved Ops 2025 has done a lot to improve the game. Crit Ops are more engaging and, you know, fun. They're more important to focus over, and TAC Ops are better as well. So yeah, you know, we're relying on January. Please, the January slate. You have so much work to do. We might even get the next teams by then, although I hope not. I'm hoping February. That would be a nice space out, but they could drop January as well. So we'll see what happens. The meta is in a weird place. Like, personally, I'm staying away from tournaments unless I know like it's going to be a chilled affair. because I just can't be bothered playing as or into Canoptic anymore. And I'm not really looking for, like, Wolf Scouts are like kind of manageable if you play an A tier team, right? And then Death Watch, they are manageable-ish, but it's just like the top end is just not very fun. But yeah, you know, I keep repeating myself, but if you look at the bottom, like A tier and below, yeah, it's a really fun, varied meta. So we're almost there. So I'm a little bit more optimistic. But that's pretty much it for me today. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Did you find it useful or helpful? Remember, I'll have an article version of this down in the episode description below. I also have a Discord you can check out free in the episode description below, an affiliate link at Element Games, an affiliate link discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. And I'm just going to shout out my patrons. So for my adepts of the crit, I have Fruddy, Vadim, Alexis, Alex, Marshall, the Houston Toad, Dan, Amorphium, Draken, Fangzu, Lucas, Graham, Tom, Mr. Meatwad, Dan Golden, Nix, Super Cow. And then for my veterans of the crit, I have Yuguang and Rolling Zero. So thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. So yeah, this is the video supposed to be out earlier this week. It's now coming out Friday. Yeah, so yeah, you know, this is kind of gathered from my experience at Worlds, a bit of the stats and talking to a lot of players. I'm more confident in this tier list than I have been. I'm glad I waited. Also included the Dead Silence team. So pretty cool there, right? Very nice. So yeah, you know, it's very weird. I've been talking to a lot of players and we're just like, our hopes and dreams rely on the January Balance Dataslate. Like, we really need those changes, which is why we're kind of just staying away from the S-tier teams. We've done our tournament season and we just want to refresh. Personally, I'm playing Blades of Cain. They're really cool from like a modeling perspective for me. Also because I then can like use them to spec into my Elder army for 40k. And yeah, I just really love Eldari. So that's what I'm playing at the moment. So, you know, we'll see. We're probably going to go back into a bit of sphere of like community self-comping, probably. You know, as I said, all the big tournaments are kind of done for a while. But yeah, remember, you stay away from tier 15. But no matter what the tiers say, you always have a chance to win as long as you can roll a crit.